When we last left James, the captain and first mate of the ship had just seen the Peach being lifted out of the water by a pack of large seagulls. What happens when that Peach disappears from thin air? Let's find out today, where Kiyaya and I sit back and get cozy and we share the next several chapters of Roald Dahl's classic book, James and the Giant Peach. It all starts now on Get Cozy, it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel.
Are you tired of your high cable bill?
Yes!
Then come to 2287 Route 112, Long Island Telecom, and let me put you on AT&T TV and I will beat your cable bill. 631-833-9679 or on the web at litelecomgroup.com.
Stories are such an important part of our lives. Join my friend Kiyaya and I for Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel, where we share some of the greatest picture books and chapters from children's and young adult literature to inspire you to keep embedding literacy into your days.
Chapter 24. But up on the Peach itself, everyone was still happy and excited. "I wonder where we'll finish up this time," the earthworm said. "Who cares?" they answered. "Seagulls always go back to the land sooner or later." Up and up they went, high above the highest clouds, the Peach swaying gently from side to side as it floated along. "Wouldn't this be a perfect time for a little music?" the ladybug asked. "How about it, old grasshopper?" "With pleasure, dear lady," the old green grasshopper answered, bowing from the waist. "Oh, hooray, he's gonna play for us!" they cried, and immediately the whole company sat themselves down in a circle around the old green musician, and the concert began. From the moment that the first note was struck, the audience became completely spellbound, and as for James, never heard such beautiful music as this. In the garden at home on summer evenings, he had listened many times to the sounds of grasshoppers chirping in the grass, and he had always liked the noise they made. But this was a different kind of noise altogether. It was real music, chords, harmonies, tunes, and all the rest of it. And what a wonderful instrument the old green grasshopper was playing on. It was like a violin. It was almost exactly as though he were playing upon a violin, the bow of a violin. The part that moved was his back leg, the strings of the violin. The part that made the sound was the edge of his wing. He was only using the top of his back leg, the thigh, and he was stroking this up and down against the edge of his wing with incredible skill. Sometimes slowly, sometimes fast, but with incredible skill. But always with the same easy flowing action. It was precisely the way a clever violinist would have used his bow, and the music came pouring out and filled the whole blue sky around them with magic melodies. When the first part was finished and everyone clapped madly, Miss Spider stood up and shouted, "Bravo! Encore! Give us some more!" "Did you like that, James?" the old green grasshopper asked, smiling at the small boy. "Oh, I loved it," James answered. "It was beautiful. It was as though you had a real violin in your hands." "A real violin?" the old green grasshopper cried. "Good heavens! I like that, my dear boy. I am a real violin. It's part of my own body." "But do all grasshoppers play their music on violins the same way you do?" James asked him. "No," he answered, "not at all. If you want to know, I happen to be a short-horned grasshopper. I have two short feelers coming out of my head. Can you see them? There they are. They are quite short, aren't they?" That's why they call me a shorthorn, and we shorthorns are the only ones who play our music in the violin style. Using a bow, my long-horned relatives, the ones who have their long curvy feelers coming out of their heads, make their music simply by rubbing the edges of their two top wings together. They are not violinists, they are wing rubbers. And a rather inferior noise these wing rubbers produce too, if I may say so. It sounds more like a banjo than a fiddle. How fascinating this all is, cried James, and to think that up until now I had never even wondered how a grasshopper made his sounds. My dear young fellow, the old green grasshopper said gently, there are a whole lot of things in this world of ours that you haven't even started wondering about yet. Where, for example, do you think that I keep my ears? Your ears? Why, in your head, of course. Everyone burst out laughing. You mean you don't even know that? Cried the centipede. Try again, said the old green grasshopper, smiling at James. You can't possibly keep them anywhere else. Oh? Can't I? Well, I give up. Where do you keep them? Right here, said the old green grasshopper, one on each side of my tummy. It's not true. Of course it's true. What's so peculiar about that? You ought to see where my cousins the crickets and the katydids keep theirs. Where do you keep them? Where do they keep them? In their legs. One in each front leg, just below the knee. You mean you didn't know that either? The centipede said scornfully. You're joking, James said. Nobody could possibly have his ears in his legs. Why not? Because it's ridiculous, that's why. You know what I think is ridiculous, said the centipede, grinning all away as usual. I don't mean to be rude, but I think it's ridiculous to have ears on the side of one's head. It certainly looks ridiculous. You ought to take a peek in the mirror someday and see for yourself. Pest, cried the earthworm. Why must you always be so rude and rambunctious to everyone? You ought to apologize to James at once. Chapter 25. James didn't want the earthworm and the centipede to get into an argument, so he said quickly to the earthworm, Tell me, do you play any kind of music? No, but I do other things, some of which are really quite extraordinary, the earthworm said, brightening. Such as what? Asked James. Well, the earthworm said, next time you stand in a field or in a garden and look around you, then just remember this, that every grain of soil upon the surface of the land, every tiny little bit of soil that you can see, has actually passed through the body of an earthworm during the last few years. Isn't that wonderful? It's not possible, said James. My dear boy, it's a fact. You mean you actually swallow soil? Like mad, the earthworm said proudly, in one end and out the other. But what's the point? What do you mean, what's the point? Why do you do it? We do it for the farmers. It makes the soil nice and light and crumbly so that things will grow well in it. If you really want to know, the farmers couldn't do without us. We are essential. We are vital. So it is only natural that the farmer be in love with us. He loves us even more, I believe, than he loves the ladybug. The ladybug? James said, turning to look at her. Do they love you too? I am told that they do, the ladybug answered modestly, blushing all over. In fact, I understand that in some places the farmers love us so much that they go out and buy live ladybugs by the sackful and take them home and set them free in their fields. They are very pleased when they have lots of ladybugs in their fields. But why? James asked. Because we gobble up all the nasty little insects that are gobbling up all the farmers' crops. It helps enormously, and we ourselves don't charge a penny for our services. I think you're wonderful, James told her. Can I ask you one special question? Please do. Well, is it really true that I can tell how old a ladybug is by counting her spots? Oh no, that's just a children's story, the ladybug said. We never change our spots. Some of us, of course, are born with more spots than others, but we never change them. The number of spots that a ladybug has is simply a way of showing which branch of the family she belongs to. I, for example, as you can see for yourself, am a 9-spotted ladybug. I am very lucky. It is a fine thing to be. It is indeed, said James, gazing at the beautiful scarlet shell with the 9 black spots on it. On the other hand, the ladybug went on, some of my less fortunate relatives have no more than 2 spots altogether on their shells. Can you imagine that? They are called 2-spotted ladybugs, and very common and ill-mannered they are, I regret to say. And then, of course, you have the 5-spotted ladybugs as well. They are much nicer than the 2-spotted ones, although I myself find them a trifle too saucy for my taste. But they are all of them loved? Said James. Yes, the ladybug answered quickly. They are all loved by them. It seems that almost everyone around here is loved, said James. How nice is this? Not me, cried the centipede happily. I am a pest, and I am proud of it. Oh, I am such a shocking, dreadful pest. Hear, hear, the earthworm said. But what about you, Miss Spider? Asked James. Aren't you also much loved in the world? Alas, no, Miss Spider answered, sighing long and loud. I am not loved at all. And yet I do nothing but good. All I do all day long is catch flies and mosquitoes in my webs. I am a decent person. I know you are, said James. It is very unfair the way we spiders are treated, Miss Spider went on. Why, only last week your own horrible Aunt Sponge flushed my poor dear father down the plug hole in the bathtub. Oh, how awful, cried James. I watched the whole thing from a corner up in the ceiling, Miss Spider murmured. It was ghastly. We never saw him again. A large tear rolled down her cheek and fell with a splash on the floor. But is it not very unlucky to kill a spider? James inquired, looking around to all the others. Of course it's unlucky to kill a spider, shouted the centipede. It's about the unluckiest thing anyone can do. Look what happened to Aunt Sponge after she'd done that. Bump! We all felt it, didn't we, as the peach went over her? Oh, what a lovely bump that must have been for you, Miss Spider. It was very satisfactory, Miss Spider answered. You sing us a song about it, please. So, the centipede did. Aunt Sponge was terrifically fat and tremendously flabby at that. Her tummy and waist were as soggy as paste. It was worse on the place where she sat. So she said, I must make myself flat. I must make myself sleek as a cat. I shall do without dinner to make myself thinner. But along came the peach, oh, the beautiful peach, and made her far thinner than that. That was very nice, Miss Spider said. Now sing one about Aunt Spiker. With pleasure, the centipede answered, grinning. Aunt Spiker was thin as a wire, and as dry as a bone, only drier. She was so long and thin, if you carried her in, you could use her for poking the fire. I must do something quickly, she frowned. I want fat, I want pound upon pound. I must eat lots of marshmallows and chocks, till I start bulging out all around. Ah, yes, she announced, I have sworn that I shall alter my figure by dawn. Cried the peach with a snigger, I'll alter your figure, and ironed her out on the lawn. Everybody clapped and called out for more songs from the centipede, who at once launched into his favorite song of all. Once upon a time, when pigs were swine, and monkeys chewed tobacco, and hens took snuff to make themselves tough, and the ducks said quack, quack, quacko, and the porcupines drank fiery wines, and the goats ate tapioca, and old Mother Hubbard got stuck in the... Look out, centipede, cried James, look out! Chapter 26. The centipede, who had begun dancing wildly around the deck during the song, had suddenly gone too close to the downward curving edge of the peach, and for 3 awful seconds he had stood teetering on the brink, swinging his legs frantically in circles in an effort to stop himself from falling over backward into space. but before anyone could reach him, down he went. He gave a shriek of terror as he fell, and the others, rushing to the side and peering over, saw his long, poor body tumbling over and over through the air, getting smaller and smaller until it was out of sight. "Silkworm!" yelled James. "Quick, start spinning!" The silkworm sighed, for she was still very tired from spinning all that silk for the seagulls, but she did as she was told. "I'm going down after him," cried James, grabbing the silk string as it started coming out of the silkworm and tying the end of it around his waist. "The rest of you hold on to Silkworm so I don't pull her over with me. And later on, if you feel 3 tugs on the string, start hauling me up again." He jumped and he went tumbling down after the centipede, down, down, down toward the sea below, and you can imagine how quickly the silkworm had to spin to keep up with the speed of his fall. "We'll never see either of them again!" cried the ladybug. Oh dear, just when we were all so happy, too!" Miss Spider, the glowworm, and the ladybug all began to cry. So did the earthworm. "I don't care a bit about the centipede," the earthworm sobbed, "but I really did love that little boy." Very softly, the old green grasshopper started to play the funeral march on his violin, and by the time he had finished, everyone, including himself, was in a flood of tears. Suddenly there came 3 sharp tugs on the rope. "Pull!" shouted the old green grasshopper. "Everybody get behind me and pull!" There was about a mile of string to be hauled in, but they all worked like mad, and in the end, over the side of the peach, there appeared a dripping wet James with a dripping wet centipede, clinging to him tightly with all 42 of his legs. "He saved me!" gasped the centipede. "He swam around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean until he found me!" "My dear boy," the old green grasshopper said, patting James on the back, "I do congratulate you." "My boots!" cried the centipede. "Just look at my precious boots! They are ruined by the water!" "Be quiet," the earthworm said. "You are lucky to be alive." "Are we still going up and up?" asked James. "We certainly are," answered the old green grasshopper, "and it's beginning to get dark." "I know it'll soon be night. Why don't we all go down below and keep warm until tomorrow morning?" Miss Spider suggested. "No," the old green grasshopper said. "I think that would be very unwise. It would be safer if we stay up here through the night and keep watch. Then, if anything happens, we shall be ready for it." Chapter 27. James Henry Trotter and his companions crouched close together on top of the peach as the night began closing in around them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. Gradually it grew darker and darker, and then a pale 3/4 moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light over the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and the hundreds of silky white strings going upward from its stem were beautiful in the moonlight. So also was the great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was not in the least like traveling in an airplane. The airplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there in the great cloud mountains goes running for cover as it approaches. That is why people who travel in airplanes never see anything. But the peach, ah yes, the peach was a soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along. And several times during that long, silent night ride high up over the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one had ever seen before. Once they drifted silently past a massive white cloud. They saw on the top of it a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things that were about twice the height of ordinary men. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as white as the cloud itself. But as the peach sailed closer, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures. Tall, wispy, wraith-like, shadowy white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss and thin white hairs. Ooh, the ladybug said. I don't like this at all. Shh, James whispered back. Don't let them hear you. They must be cloudmen. Cloudmen? They murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. Oh dear, I'm glad I'm blind and can't see them, the earthworm said, or I would probably scream. I hope they don't turn around and see us, Miss Spider stammered. Do you think they would eat us? The earthworm asked. They would eat you, the centipede answered, grinning. They would cut you up like a salami and eat you in thin slices. The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. But what are they doing? The old green grasshopper whispered. I don't know, James answered softly. Let us watch and see. The cloudmen were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First, they would all reach out at once and grab handfuls of cloud. Then they would roll these handfuls of cloud in their fingers until they turned into what looked like large, white marbles. Then they would toss the marbles out to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start over again. It was all very silent and mysterious. The pile of marbles began growing larger and larger. Soon there was a truckload of them at least. They must be absolutely mad, the centipede said. There's nothing to be afraid of here. Be quiet, you pest, the earthworm whispered. We shall be eaten if they see us. But the cloudmen were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed the great peach floating silently up behind them. Then the watchers on the peach saw one of the cloudmen raising his long, wispy arms above his head. They heard him shouting, All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels. And all the other cloudmen immediately let out a strange, high-pitched whoop of joy and started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air. Then they picked up enormous shovels and rushed over to the pile of marbles and began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud and into space. Down they go, they chanted as they worked. Down they go, hail and snow, freezes and sneezes and noses will blow. It's hailstones, whispered James excitedly. They've been making hailstones, and now they are showering them down on the people on the world below. Hailstones, the centipede said. That's ridiculous. It's summertime. You don't have hailstones in summertime. They are practicing for the winter, James told him. I don't believe it, shouted the centipede, raising his voice. Shh, the others whispered, and James said softly, For heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise. For Centipede roared with laughter. Those imbeciles couldn't hear anything, he cried. They're deaf as doorknobs, you watch. And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet to his mouth and were yelling at the cloudmen as loud as he could. Idiots! He yelled. Nincompoops, halfwits, blunderheads, asses! What on earth do you think you're doing over there? The effect was immediate. The cloudmen jumped around as if they had been stung by wasps, and when they saw the great golden peach floating past them, not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise and dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood with the moonlight streaming down over them, absolutely motionless, like a group of tall, white, hairy statues, staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went passing by. The passengers on the peach, all except for the centipede, sat frozen in terror, looking back at the cloudmen and wondering what was going to happen next. Now you've done it, you loathsome pest, whispered the earthworm to the centipede. I'm not frightened of them, shouted the centipede, and to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up to his full height and started dancing about and making insulting signs at the cloudmen with all 42 of his legs. This evidently infuriated the cloudmen beyond belief. All at once they spun around and grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and rushed them to the edge of the cloud and started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury all the time. Look out! Cried James. Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck. It was lucky they did. A large hailstone could hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it is thrown hard enough, and my goodness, how those cloudmen could throw. The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a machine gun, and James could hear them smashing against the sides of the peach and burying themselves in the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises, plop, 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 and then ping, 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 as they bounced off the poor ladybug's shell because she couldn't lie as flat as the others. And then crack, as one of them hit the centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. Ow, he cried, ow, stop, stop, stop! But the Cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about on the cloud like a lot of huge hairy ghosts, picking up hailstones from the pile, dashing to the edge of the cloud, hurling the hailstones at the peach, dashing back again to get more, and then when the pile of stones were all gone, they simply grabbed a handful of clouds and made as many more as they wanted, much bigger ones now, some of them as large as cannonballs. Quickly, cried James, down the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out! There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later, everybody was safe downstairs inside the stone of the peach. Trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. I'm a wreck, groaned the centipede. I am wounded all over. It serves you right, said the earthworm. Would somebody kindly look and see if my shell is cracked? The ladybug said. Give us some light, shouted the gold green grasshopper. I can't, wailed the glowworm. They've broken my bulb. Then put in another one, the centipede said. Be quiet a moment, James said. Listen, I do believe they're not hitting us anymore. They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had ceased. The hailstones were no longer smashing against the peach. We've left them behind. The seagulls must have pulled us away out of danger. Hooray! Let's go up and see! Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. It's all clear, he called. I can't see them anywhere. I know, Kiyaya. James always seems to get in quite an adventure in each section we read. And this week's episode doesn't fail to disappoint. But now, we've come to the favorite part of our show. That's right, friends. Let's get crafty. We are going to be asking you for this episode of Get Cozy as we complete this section of James the Giant Peach to select your favorite part of what we read and draw a magnificent illustration in black and white or with great imagination in color. Share your art on our social media at Stitching Wolf on Facebook and Instagram, or send them to Kiyaya through email at getcozy@stitchingwolfdesigns.com. We'll be back with another great episode soon, and we will continue the incredible adventures of James Henry Trotter and his insect friends in the Giant Peach next week when we get cozy together with this great book by Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach. Until then, stay safe and happy and healthy, and always remember, that's right, Kiyaya, reading is power.